Here is something no one taught you in school. Beneath the streets of at least a dozen American cities, there are rooms. Not maintenance tunnels, not utility corridors, not storm drains. Rooms. With arched ceilings, with window frames that open onto nothing, with doorways that lead to staircases descending further down, further than any city record says they should go. And in 1871, something happened across America that the official history calls a period of urban reconstruction. But the deeper I looked, the more that word, reconstruction, began to feel like the wrong word entirely. Let's start with what we're told. We're told that American cities in the 1870s were young, raw, largely wooden, and that a series of devastating fires, natural disasters, and sanitation crises forced the rapid rebuilding of urban centers across the country. We're told that cities like Chicago, Seattle, and Cincinnati were essentially rebuilt from the ground up during this period. Progress, modernization. The inevitable growing pains of a young nation finding its infrastructure. That's the story, but here is the first anomaly. On the night of October 8, 1871, the Great Chicago Fire consumed an estimated 17,000 buildings across more than 3 square miles. The official cause, a cow kicking over a lantern in a barn on DeCoven Street. That is the story American schoolchildren have been told for over a century. What is less discussed is this. On the exact same night, October 8, 1871, the Peshtigo Fire erupted in Wisconsin, consuming over 1.2 million acres and killing more than 2,000 people. The deadliest fire in recorded American history. On the same night, fires of unusual scale and intensity broke out in Michigan, in Indiana, along the entire western shore of Lake Michigan simultaneously. The official explanation calls this a coincidence of dry conditions and strong winds, but here is the simple question no one seems to ask. What single weather event produces simultaneous catastrophic fires across hundreds of miles of geographically separated terrain on the same calendar night? The silence on that question in the standard histories is deafening. Now let's talk about what happened after. When Chicago was rebuilt, something was done to it that has no clean parallel in the history of urban construction. The entire city was razed, not metaphorically, physically. Buildings that had survived the fire were lifted, some of them entire city blocks, using hydraulic jacks, and the ground level of Chicago was elevated by as much as 12 feet in certain districts. The official explanation is drainage. The city needed better sewage infrastructure and raising the grade solved the problem. That is a reasonable answer. It would be entirely satisfying if it didn't produce the following consequence. An entire layer of the original city was left beneath the new one. Streets that had been street level became basement level. Doorways that had opened onto sidewalks now opened onto dirt. An intact urban environment, sealed beneath the new Chicago, preserved not by accident but by the geometry of what was built on top of it. The Chicago Underground exists. It is documented. It is partially accessible today through guided tour. The official framing is that it is a quirk of urban development, a novelty, a historical footnote. But here's the strangest part. When you look at what is down there, the construction quality, the scale of the arched brick corridors, the proportions of the rooms, the sophistication of the ventilation channels. It does not match the construction timeline that the official record assigns to it. Buildings supposedly constructed in the 1850s and 1860s by a rough frontier city of Modest means display masonry work of a quality and precision that architects who have examined it describe. Without irony as remarkable. This raises a simple but critical question. Who built this and when? Now cross to Seattle. In 1889, the Great Seattle Fire consumed the central business district. The city was rebuilt, and like Chicago, it was rebuilt upward. The original street level was buried beneath a new grade. And beneath modern Seattle, accessible today through what is marketed as the Seattle Underground Tour, there are intact storefronts, intact sidewalks, intact rooms with their original fixtures still in place. The official explanation is straightforward urban redevelopment. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision. Cincinnati. The city began construction on a subway system in 1920, bored tunnels beneath its downtown, and then abruptly stopped. The tunnels still exist. Miles of completed subway infrastructure beneath an American city that was never opened, never explained, never fully accounted for in any public record I have been able to locate. And Cincinnati is not alone. Beneath the streets of a dozen American cities, there are tunnels, chambers, and passages whose documented origins are incomplete, whose construction records are absent, or whose scale simply does not match the stated purpose they were supposedly built to serve. The evidence suggests something much larger than a series of unrelated fires and rebuilding projects. Because consider what 1871 actually represents in the American timeline. It is the precise moment between the end of Reconstruction and the beginning of what historians call the Gilded Age, the period during which American cities transformed. With extraordinary speed and coordination, from rough settlements to gleaming civic monuments, grand train stations, ornate government buildings, World's Fair exhibition halls of staggering scale, built according to official records by cities that had been frontier outposts one generation earlier. And at the base of all of it, beneath all of it, in city after city, something older. Something with arched ceilings and sealed doorways and construction quality that exceeds what the official timeline allows. I want to be precise about what I am and am not claiming. I am not claiming that a lost civilization built Chicago. I am not claiming that the fires of 1871 were deliberately set to erase evidence of something prior. I cannot prove either of those things. What I am claiming is that the questions these facts produce have not been asked loudly enough, and that the official explanations, taken one at a time, are locally coherent but collectively strained. Because the coordination problem doesn't go away. For the fires of October 8, 1871 to be coincidental, you need to accept a meteorological event with no documented parallel. For the underground layers of Chicago and Seattle to be explained by routine urban development, you need to accept construction quality and scale that exceeds the documented capacity of the builders assigned to them. For the unfinished Cincinnati subway to be a simple case of abandoned infrastructure, you need to explain why no serious public accounting was ever made for what was spent, what was found, and why it stopped. And here is what I keep returning to: the Hohokam canals beneath Phoenix, the sealed rooms beneath Chicago, the tunnels beneath Seattle, the incomplete subway beneath Cincinnati. These are not claimed by conspiracy theorists. They are visible, accessible, documented, physically present beneath the cities that were built after 1871. And every single one of them is explained by the official history as something built just before and then buried just after, an artifact of a previous mundane phase of the same civilization. Nothing to see, nothing to ask about, move along. But the man who named Phoenix said it himself, rising from the ruins of something prior, not a metaphor, a description. And somewhere beneath the streets of American cities, in sealed rooms with arched ceilings and doorways that open onto nothing, is a question that has not been answered. Not who built them, not when, but why, in a narrow window around 1871, so many of them were covered over, built upon, renamed, and quietly, officially concluded. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.